We're talking Kings new additions so far, what we've seen through 7 games, Adrian Kempe contract talks, and more with Connor Doyle of the Hockey News on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. I am Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years. Also one of the co-hosts of Locked On NHL Game Night, a nightly YouTube show and podcast that recaps the night in the NHL. And I'm a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. We are happy to be joined once again today by a man who covers the LA Kings for the Hockey News. His name is Connor Doyle, and you can follow him on X Twitter at Lords of the Rinks. Hey, Connor, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Doing great. Good to be back, Eddie. Always good to be back. We have hockey season. 7 games in, but we have hockey season.
Yeah, it is good to be back. That offseason seemed a lot longer than normal. Maybe it was because of how the season ended for the Kings last year, but it is good to be back, although what we've seen so far has been very interesting. We'll certainly get into all of that, but the last time we had you on, Ken Holland had been named general manager. We had kind of speculated about, what kind of things might happen in the offseason, but I haven't gotten your take on this group of players that Ken Holland has brought in. We got to see one of them for the first time in the most recent game for the Kings. Of course, that's Corey Perry, but a couple of forwards, a couple of defensemen, and a backup goalie. When it was all said and done, what was kind of your takeaway from this first offseason for Ken Holland as Kings general manager?
It would be pretty easy to say that it was underwhelming, but then when you look at the market and you look at who was available, I mean, throw out the Mitch Marner, that was always going to be a wild goose hunt. But if you look at the market for who was available, I really think that the Kings salvaged under Holland what they could have. If anyone was coming in thinking that Holland was going to knock out that Rasmus Anderson trade, maybe get Mitch Marner, maybe just have this team take another run, I think he did what he could, what was available on the market. But I would still label it as underwhelming. I think Joel Armia was a great pickup. Corey Perry is another savvy pickup to bolster their forward group, but their defensive moves were definitely very underwhelming. Anton Forsberg's a good pickup for the back end. And the only thing I think I would add on to that back end is that Brian Dumoulin has I would almost throw him in that middle category. He might also be a savvy move. He's also looked good.
While you've brought it up, I would like to maybe get your theories on this, if you have any, because, the Kings were scheduled to meet with Mitch Marner, but he made his decision before they ever got a chance to even pitch to him what they were going to offer him or whatever it was. And he chose Vegas. And frankly, that made a ton of sense. I mean, he got the money he wanted. He goes to a team that's been to a Stanley Cup final and deeper in the playoffs than the Kings have anytime recently. They've got, he can play with a guy like a Jack Eichel there. And frankly, without all due respect to LA, I think people in Las Vegas probably are more passionate about the Vegas Golden Knights than your regular sports fans are here in Los Angeles. So it made a ton of sense. I'm not surprised at all if it was even a choice between Vegas and LA, which it probably wasn't. But the Kings have traditionally not drawn free agents of any note. They've added pieces, as we've seen, but they have never really gotten a big name free agent ever. Now, granted, they did maybe get the biggest trade in hockey history with Wayne Gretzky, but you have any theories as to why the LA Kings don't seem to land big-time free agents?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think specifically in like that Dean Lombardi moving into Rob Blake era where this is transition of rebuilding, I would say that the Kings particularly stuck to a schematic and they didn't really add a ton of free agent. You saw that with Alex Edler. They signed Phil Deneau through free agency. You saw kind of that as they kind of moved into this like retransitioning period. But I really think that they stick to their schematic. And like you see today, this year, this offseason where they kind of had to add through free agency, right? Having to do it and then sticking to the schematic have been two different things. And then like going to your question about LA versus Vegas, I know they do it before every single game during the Star Spangled Banner, the national anthem. They show those two banners. I'm not showing any gray hair yet, but that's over 10 years old. Vegas has had way more success since their inception in the league than the Kings. The Kings haven't censored anything. Vegas has been to the finals twice now. They've won, and they've had deep playoff runs. They've had a lot of success. And if you look at the names they've picked up over the years, you can go back to like Max Pacioretty. They pick up Noah Hannafin. They get Jack Eichel from Buffalo. I mean, like that's a buzzing hockey town. I don't know if you've actually been able to get to see a game over at T-Mobile. I've been. That is a great arena. They have their walking song as one of the background music to John Wick. I mean, it's a buzzing crowd. It's a great place to play. And I think it's also a little bit under the radar too. I mean, it's a big hockey town now, but I still think that these guys, it's very much Elvis Presley city. There's I don't know if there's 50 lookalikes of Noah Hannafin or Jack Eichel walking around, unless people are getting perms out there. But I still think going from Toronto to LA versus Toronto to Vegas, the scenery, the current culture that's there, who you're getting to play next to. Is Mitch Marner going to play next to the heir apparent in Byfield, or the consensus number one they're still running with a almost 40-year-old Anze Kopitar? I think if you're Mitch Marner, you want to go with a bona fide top 5 center in the league. I don't know if you could even remotely say that about Kopitar, in all due respect to a Hall of Fame career.
You're from Southern California. You know the market.
Mm-hmm.
I think, understandably, some Kings fans will say, well, the Dodgers can get Shohei Ohtani, or the Lakers can sign, some big free agents. Why can't the Kings do that? Is that even a fair comparison, considering kind of where those franchises are in relation to their sports and where the Kings are? I mean, look, the Kings are a top 5 franchise as far as value.
Revenue. Yeah.
Right. And they do spend to the cap traditionally. But do you think, as far as fan take, do you think that's a fair take for Kings fans to say, well, if they can do it, why can't we do it?
I don't think it's a fair comparison, because there's two words, and I'd say luxury tax, right? Dodgers pay a plethora. They pay a premium on luxury tax. There is certain aspects where, like, you have the scouting overseas. Like, now the Dodgers just have cornered a market from Japan. Imagine getting Shohei Ohtani, a generational player, and then going to get the next generational player out of Japan twice. I mean, I think Yamamoto won their equivalent of the Cy Young Award like 6 times, and the Sasaki is supposed to be even better. So, I mean, I know this is not a locked on Dodgers, but I don't think it's a fair comparison when you could pay a luxury tax and your threshold of salary cap is in the hundreds of millions, and your best player on the LA Kings is, which I'm sure we'll get to, but is making maybe 11.5, 11 million. I mean, is that Kike Hernandez's salary? I mean, not that Kike's not having a great offseason or postseason, but yeah, I don't think it's a fair comparison when you have a luxury tax. And I look at the ownership groups between the two, and used to be McCourt. Now it's kind of that new, I believe it's the Guggenheim with Magic. And you think about the funds that are being thrown that way. I mean, AG, the Anschultz group, has been great for the franchise, but I think when you could dip into a luxury tax, and when the salary cap's kind of fluid, it's not a fluid salary cap. Right? We're in the cap area, the hard cap era. They're finding ways now, as we've seen. I know we just mentioned Vegas, but they're finding ways to close down loopholes too with the LTIR. I mean, there's not many ways you can get that creative anymore.
Before we get into what we've seen so far this season, I did want to ask you, and you mentioned the moves that Ken Holland made, and you kind of felt like it was, under the circumstances, maybe the best the Kings could have done. Mm-hmm. How did you feel the Kings were, without seeing them on the ice, obviously, but just from a lineup standpoint, just looking at how things appeared they were going to shake out? How did you feel about the Kings going into this season? Did you think they were better, about the same, worse? What were your thoughts on it?
It's the push and pull is immediately what I thought. I thought, wow, like, you're going to see these major internal growth from guys like Laferriere, Turcotte, Byfield, right? You're going to see those big jumps, and now you've enhanced a fourth line. Even I wouldn't argue that fourth lines can make or break a playoff series. I think your top 9 is really your fourth line is going to enhance things, but it's not a make or break. I think that's a layman's or a poor man's excuse for losing a series, is just blaming it like, oh, like our third pair and our fourth pair really let us down. Yeah, they didn't use it, but the upgrades they got were players that can play in special teams, veteran presences. I think Joel Armia, like I said, was savvy pickup. Corey Perry, great pickup for the power play, because that second power play unit last year, Eddie, was non-existent. Right, just right now, kind of still the same situation. But I thought their forward group, with the internal growth they're going to take, and with the pickups they had, I was like, this is a better forward group from last year. Is it like leaps and bounds from last year? No, but it's a better forward group. But that defensive end, go ahead, sorry.
No, please continue.
Okay. The back end, though, like the departure of Spence, departure of Gavrikov, who was essentially their number one last year when Dowdy was out. We forget that Anderson Gavrikov pairing, Gavrikov playing on his offside, like they held it down for almost half the season, and he was used as the number one guy. And I just don't know if maybe that sat well with him. I can't speak on his behalf. I'm just from an outside perspective. That's what I understand from the situation. He was the number one guy. You essentially lost a number one defenseman, and you use that price tag to get technically on paper and analytically 2 sub-level defenders. So, and then also your back end, not just because Spence is just your speed demon on the back end, but your back end lost a ton of mobility. This might be, and I was trying to look it up prior to this call, but trying to look up the edge data on the back end for the Kings. It has to be, and obviously I don't have the proof because I wasn't able to get fully, that it has to be one of the slowest decors in the league. And it has to be one of the one decors that struggles to get the puck out of their own end. So long-winded way to answer your question. My fears have kind of been confirmed about the decor, and then the forward group is still kind of in flux, especially with the injuries that have occurred. And but better on forward core marginally, and I'd see definitely a step back on D.
All right, we'll get more into what we've seen on the ice at this point through 7 games of the season. We'll do that next year on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Let's be real. Making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress. I'm tired, or it happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body needs a little extra support. That's where Rugiet comes in. Rugiet.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rugiet makes it easy to get started. You just connect with a board-certified doctor, 100% online, no awkward meetings, no in-person appointments. If prescribed, your shipment is discreet, straight to your door. Process is fast, simple, and private. It's all handled by a real doctor. It's about confidence, connection, and getting back to the moments that matter. Visit Rugiet.com. That's Rugiet.com/LockedOnNHL, and you'll get 15% off your first order. Again, that is Rugiet.com, Rugiet.com/LockedOnNHL. Don't forget to use the code LockedOnNHL so they know that we sent you. Rugiet, stop making excuses and start making moves. And the NFL season's here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to bet across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It is quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sunday. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, we are continuing with Connor Doyle. He covers the LA Kings for the Hockey News, and you talked about maybe some of your fears realized at this point of the season. It's been 7 games, and we've seen a little bit of everything, and not necessarily in a good way from the LA Kings. 2-3-2 is the record. We've seen at times them get off to a good start and then blow it late. We've seen them get off to terrible starts and then rally to get back in the game and maybe force overtime or shootout. We've seen them take a ton of penalties. We've seen them get a lot of power play opportunities and not be able to score. It's been a lot of different things on a lot of different nights. Add it all together, and it seems like they're very disjointed at this point, although coming off a game in St. Louis where I thought it looked a lot more like the Kings we're used to seeing with the defense and limiting shots on goal, that kind of thing. Just kind of what's your take on what we've seen so far? I know it's early, but it doesn't take long for that to just kind of wear off. Again, I'll just go ahead and ask the question. What do you think about what we've seen so far from the Kings?
Haven't seen a game 1 in regulation. I mean, I think that's like the biggest thing that's on my mind from these Kings. And like you said, with the St. Louis game, like I think we saw what these Kings were capable of and what these Kings have done, and we got to see exactly what they've done the last few years. I mean, smother opponents. They start off the third period. It was 19-8 on shots on goal. I mean, you saw them kind of steamroll in terms of possession, in terms of zone time. They're doing their thing. They have something that they have made the part of their DNA. But that hasn't been the case for all the games. And what you're hoping with is, in my opinion, with 7 games in, is that it's so early on and you kind of see things fall into place. It's a tough team to read because they have not been consistent. They put together some type of consistency through certain periods where you're like, wow, this team might have something. But then you also watch them and it just doesn't seem all there. And I think the record reflects that, not being able to get it done in regulation, having to claw back in games, like things like the penalties. The amount of pen times, I think they're the number 1 or number 2 team in the league, the amount of penalty minutes they've had this season. That's just not sustainable. And yes, you had an elite penalty killing performance from Kempe last year. And even prior to that, Cam Talbot was an elite penalty killing goaltender in LA. That hasn't been the case this year, right? You have 2 goaltenders that analytically have been some of the worst goaltending in the year. Kempe came back in a strong way against St. Louis. That's what expected. That's also something I probably should have touched about, is that was also my fear going into the offseason, is that Kempe was a Vezina finalist. And you want him to replicate that in his age. You're getting into like a fishy area. So 7 games in, I think you're seeing a lot of fears materialize, but there are some bright spots. They ran into the Dumoulin CC problem, putting them in the pair probably wasn't the right thing to do, but now they split the two, and right now you have the best D pair on the Kings analytically. Dumoulin Doughty leads them in Corsi, leads them in shots for. They look good. Even though the most consistently used pair is Edmondson and Clark, their top 4 is kind of shaping out, and so they were running into this Dumoulin CC issue. They broke it apart, and I think your last kind of scenario for CC is to put them with Edmondson and you'd have to put Mikey next to Clark, which might be your D-core or first D pairing of the future. Kind of a quick preview, but there's kind of a situation where you have to eat it if you're Holland and Jim Hiller. You just kind of have to eat this problem. You're not making a trade. I don't know what team's just going to be like, he's struggling in LA, we'll pick him up here. Like we've seen, especially CC, struggle in other locations. I mean, this is his 5th or 6th team. So this is just a season where so far it's been super turbulent. You've had some key injuries very early on. Perry getting hurt in the preseason. Kopitar being. When's the last time? I think I don't know if I've ever, unless I'm trying to think of when the last time I've seen it. I don't know about you, Eddie. When's the last time you saw a picture of Anze Kopitar in a red jersey?
It's been at least 5-6 years, maybe at least.
It's been a while. Right?
I mean, he's played. I think the last 4 years he's missed like 4 or 5 games total. So
insane,
reliable to say the least. Yeah.
That the longevity of that. So you deal with certain injuries like this, and you see how certain guys step up. I mean, I never took Laferriere to be a guy to step into the 1C role, or at least have some of the 2 more talented wingers on next to him. It hasn't worked. I'm very happy they got a turnover, a quick breakaway goal, but that line has not been good. I'm glad that he was able to get on the board point wise. That line can't be sustained. Analytically, that line's getting crushed. So it's been a weird tale of the season. It's so early on where you can't, a few people have mentioned to me, and I am still not one to press the panic button and find the dead hand switch. And it's not one of those situations at 7 games in, but I think you start to move into that conversation if St. Louis comes back and they win that game. And we're looking at a 2-3-3 team. Sorry, a 2-2 or 2-3 and no, sorry, my bad. 1-3-3 team that's not the start you want. And you still haven't won a regulation. They're still on the former than the latter in the terms of being more on the risky, like things can go real south. Like they're playing with a fine. They're still on a road trip. But early on, this team has been kind of underwhelming. They look out of sync, but when they are in sync, Eddie, they have something there.
Brent Clark. I know Ken Holland talked about it in the offseason. He was one of the names that was always mentioned as far as the internal growth and those guys taking a step forward and that being a part of the plan. We'll see where his minutes are at the end of the year, which is most important if the Kings are where we would like them to be anyway. But so far, he's not getting the minutes that I would have expected. The last 2 games, he's been the defenseman that has the least amount of minutes played. Are you confident that at some point they're going to show more faith in him, or do you think how he's been used to this point is okay as long as it increases at some point? I'm a little confused as to why he is it hasn't been every game, but the last 2 games he's had the fewest amount of minutes played for any of the defensemen, and I scratch my head at that. What do you think about his usage, and will that increase? Will it turn it into something else as we go along and it's just early, or what is your thoughts on how they're using him?
It's hard to not sound like a pessimist here, Eddie, but you got to stick with a winning formula. And this team has shown that they don't really mess with that. They don't really mess with if he plays 14 minutes and they win 53 out of 82 games this year. People are still there's people would tear down at Hiller, but at the end of the day, they won 53 games and probably are way up there with President's Trophy new nailers, which is absurd. They're obviously, I don't think they're going to win 53 games, but they're probably not going to mess with a winning recipe. And it's a big bummer for Clark, and really a top-down organizational perspective, that you're letting kind of Q run with the show. I mean, the defensive side of things, coming in as a defenseman is always harder than being a forward, but there's not letting him take the reins and run with it. And when he has taken the reins, when they have given him minutes, I don't think you could pinpoint the performances of the team on if Clark plays 18 plus minutes, they're going to lose games. I would argue not. I think if you play certain players they picked up in the offseason over 20 minutes, you're starting to get into dangerous territory, right? That's what we've seen from some of these D pairs, is the more they play, the worse off it is. I think it was up until the Winnipeg or St. Louis game that Clark had not been scored on 5-on-5 while he's on the ice. Mm-hmm. So your defensive liability kind of looks like your best defensive player, but let's be fair. If Austin Matthews is coming down the wing, if I want one of the Kings defensemen to come on the board to defend him, I'm probably not going to say Brent Clark is my go-to guy. But you have the perfect example of the reluctance to kind of change the keys, change hands, do this transfer power. If you need a perfect example of that, just go look at the second power play unit who's both on point. Why do we have 2 defensemen out there? Both of them are not really point shot threats at this, especially at Doughty's point in his career. I don't really see him as a point shot threat. Why do you have 2 facilitators out there? Grant Clark's not a shot threat. I think it's a perfect visage of this scene that the Kings are showing us, that they're unable to turn the keys over. Drew Doughty is still your number 1 time on ice leader on this team, and it looks like it's going to be that way. I think until Drew Doughty has retired and he's a Hall of Famer, I don't think he's ever Brant Clark's never going to be the number 1 guy in LA while Drew Doughty's on the roster. And I think if they have a winning formula, they're just going to run with it. I think that might be at the expense of Brant Clark playing 18 plus minutes a night. I think he's probably going to be in that 14 to 17 minute range, depending on power play time. But at this point, they got to go with the one defenseman and the 4 forwards. 2 defensemen out on a power play is no pun. Not that I'm doing it literally, but that is a head scratcher.
All right, you talked about Hall of Famer and Drew Doughty. There's certainly another Hall of Famer who's playing his final season. We'll touch on that, and Adrian Kempe as well, coming up here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Hockey season is obviously here, and nothing beats being in the arena for early season games, but let's be real, getting tickets can be a total headache. Between waiting in queues, surprising fees, and prices that jump right before checkout, it's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is cheer on your team. That's where Gametime comes in, the app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NHL tickets fast, easy, and stress-free. I love that what you see is what you pay for, no hidden fees at checkout. Plus, I could actually see my view before I buy the tickets with their in-app seat view feature. Their zone deals are game changer. You pick a section, Gametime picks your seats, and you save big. And you can even find NHL tickets for under $25. Take the guesswork out of buying NHL tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Tap, swipe, ticket, go. All right, we're wrapping things up here with Connor Doyle, who covers the LA Kings for the Hockey News. Andrei Kopitar announced before the season that this will be his final season. Unfortunately, we got a little sort of a glimpse of life without him the last few games. with him being injured. However, he should be back here on this road trip, which is good to see. Just your thoughts on the career of Anze Kopitar and kind of what he's meant to the LA Kings.
He's on the Mount Rushmore of the LA Kings. He has to be. He'd probably be leading that parade, because as much as people want to put Marcel Dion on there and Gretzky, both not homegrown Kings, but Anze Kopitar is the king of kings. Dustin Brown is to be right there because he's the first captain, but Anze Kopitar is the most talented player to ever play for the Kings and has done the most for the LA Kings in terms of the community on the ice. He's going to go down as easily top 4, top 5, probably in that range, two-way players of all time. I would argue that if Patrice Bergeron wasn't playing for Boston or wasn't in the league, he'd probably be on his 5th or 6th selfie. Or if you were swap those players and Kopitar plays in Boston, I almost guarantee you he has more than 2 selfies. That's not to take a chip off of Patrice Bergeron, hell of a player, but Anze Kopitar, just a legendary player. And I hate to say that. Gosh, I feel old by saying that. Like, I've had to tell people, like, go watch Game 1 of the New Jersey Devils Kings Game 1. That's all you need to see, or just go watch his first game against going around Chris Pronger to score, a future Hall of Fame defenseman. Like, there's just so many moments. I mean, Jim Fox, I think, said it best in that his one, if you want to call it, anomaly season in the 2017, 2018, when the 4-goal game in Colorado. I mean, I was speechless. I mean, Jim Fox said it in that game, and I hate to say that I've watched that so many times when before I was writing that, to hear Jim Fox say I'm speechless. Like, I cannot believe I'm about to say this about a 2-time Stanley Cup champion. I'm speechless. I'm stunned. He's going to be missed. I mean, I'm sure that he's probably going to remain somewhat connected to the organization. I know he's moving back to Slovenia, but just a legendary player, the King of Kings on Mount Rushmore. I know he technically already has a statue, part of a statue that's with everyone. Definitely deserves his own. He will be missed. Hall of Famer, first ballot, should practically be unanimous. I don't know if we want to do the baseball comparison again, but should be a unanimous Hall of Fame. No one else should be wearing number 11 in LA after he retires.
Adrian Kempe is looking for a new contract. I know he had said that there was no rush and that he was okay with this process kind of playing out. But he didn't give a deadline, but he did say he'd like to have it done by Christmas. I said I would have signed him before the season started and gotten this over and done with. But the negotiations are going on. There are various reports as to where they are as far as the progress goes. Kyle Connor up in Winnipeg, it's a big deal. Another winger who's somewhat comparable to Adrian Kempe, I guess. He's getting $12 million a year. There was the report that Kempe was looking for 10. Maybe that's gone up now. Your thoughts on how this is resolved? Are you confident that this will get done here relatively soon, or are you concerned it hasn't gotten taken care of at this point?
I'm not exactly concerned. I think that the team's play probably doesn't have as much weight into it. I've seen that on social media, that like Kempe's watching this team, even though he's playing, and seeing this team isn't doing well. I don't think that really has the fact that this isn't, 10, 15, getting into 20 games in where the team is just sliding. He's like, do I want to sign here? And also maybe that backfires a little bit, that he's like, yeah, I'm in no rush. Well, guess what happened while the team and the league was in no rush? The time stopped for no one, right? Kaprizov signs the most expensive contract in NHL history in terms of the AAV. Connor McDavid signs a team-friendly but kind of scary deal if you're an Oilers fan. Only 2 years, but a huge pay cut. I mean, he's someone that could have gotten 20. Like you said, the Kyle Connor. The market has now shifted because it's all comparables. It's in the economics and finance world, you got to look at a comparable and compatibles. And if the market is rising, you have to go with the flow. I mean, this is how the housing market works. You've almost waited a little bit too long. Now we're in this middle ground where, okay, well, you kind of have to play ball. You can't not sign Adrian Kempe. If this team is floundering, and let's say it's a 0, 0-6 or 0-6-0 start, then maybe you start looking into, if this team is that bad, maybe you trade Kempe, who probably has the most value, to go get someone out there in the league, or start that retool. Or, okay, we've messed up the retool, we've messed up this rebuild. Let's use our most prized asset to go get that if we're not going to resign him, because $12 million is probably a little too expensive for Kempe right now. It won't be in a couple years, but right now you don't have a choice. You have to sign your best player. And right now, I'm not concerned. It's still very early on. There's very few players left that can up the ante in terms of getting re-signed themselves. So right now, it's just a little bit of a waiting game, but I think in the next probably month and a half, the things should get resolved.
All right, that is Connor Doyle of the Hockey News, who covers the LA Kings. You can follow him on X or Twitter at Lords of the Rinks. And Connor, as always, we appreciate your time. Good to get your insights into things, and we will definitely check in with you as the season unfolds and get your thoughts on things.
For sure. I just wanted to close with one thing, Eddie.
Sure.
One thing I did write down for this, that anyone that's listening, one thing to keep an eye out on before I tip my cap and head out of here: 5th, 6th, and 2nd. Those were the rankings of the LA Kings last year in Corsi, Fenwick, shots for, and goals for at 5-on-5. That's their bread and butter. This year, Eddie, 11th, 13th, 8th, and 19th. All right. That's 7 games in. Something's got to give. But if you're relying on special teams and your 5-on-5 game, which is your bread and butter, not working, something to monitor. But yes, just wanted to leave that little nugget there before I head out.
Very good. And maybe we'll check those numbers again the next time we have you on the show. Appreciate that. Appreciate your time, Connor, and we'll see you out at the rink hopefully sometime soon.
Sounds good, Eddie. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. For you everydayers, those who listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, our next show will be following the Kings Stars game Thursday night in Dallas. We'll have a complete recap of everything that goes on in that game as well. And of course, we have our fan feedback show at the end of the week for you to take part in. If you would like the email address to get in on that, or for any other reason to contact the show, lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. You can always leave your comments if you're watching on YouTube in the comments section, and stay interactive with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We're at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you next time. And as always, go Kings, go.